The edge of the tower asterisk the wind was strong on top of the old tower. Cold and sharp like knives against her skin, but she didn't move back. She stood at the very edge, looking down at the city lights far below, her toes halfway over the ledge. Her name was Zuri, and she was not like the others from her planet. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes too bright, and most of all she was born without a voice. On her world, voice was everything. Songs were used to speak, to eat, to love, to survive. Those who could not sing were nothing, and Zuri had been nothing since birth. They had locked her away as a child, kept her hidden like a shameful secret, and when she escaped, no one cared. Now, standing on this lonely tower, she thought maybe falling would finally make them notice. She looked up at the twin moons above. One full, one cracked. She wanted to scream, but no sound came, just tears, cold and silent. Rolling down her cheeks, she closed her eyes and took one deep breath, and then a voice behind her said, "That's a sad place to stand." Zuri's eyes snapped open. She turned slowly, her heart racing. There stood a man tall, strange, with warm brown eyes and a jacket too thin for this wind. He was human. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, hands open, no weapon, no threat. "I'm not here to stop you," he said, softly. "I just, didn't want you to be alone if you did." Zuri stared at him. No one had ever said that to her before. Most looked away when they saw her scars. Most hurried past when she begged for food. But this man was looking straight at her. Not scared, not judging. She pointed at her throat and shook her head. No voice. He guessed, and nodded. "Okay, then I'll talk for both of us." Zuri blinked. "I'm Eli," he said, stepping just a little closer. "I came to this planet last week. They told me about your kind. They said your people cast out anyone different." She lowered her head. "I was cast out too," he said, quietly, "back on Earth. Not for my voice minds loud enough, but for being broken inside." Zuri looked up again, her brow furrowed. "I lost everything in a war," Eli said. "My home, my family, even the part of me that wanted to live." He sat down on the stone ledge, not far from her. "But then I met someone who didn't run away from my pain," he continued. "They sat with me. Just like I'm sitting with you now." The wind blew again, colder this time, but Zuri didn't step forward. She took a step back. Eli smiled. "But gently, you don't need to jump to be seen," he said. "You already shine brighter than anyone else up here." Zuri looked at her hands. They were shaking. She didn't know why his words made her heart feel so full. She had never been held, never been hugged, never been told she mattered. Eli reached into his jacket and pulled out a small round device. "It's an old voice box," he said, placing it carefully on the ledge between them. "It's not perfect, but it's something." Zuri stared at it. He didn't push it into her hands. He just left it there, like a gift. "If you want to jump," he said softly, "I won't stop you. But maybe, just maybe, you could use that first. Try hearing yourself, speak before you choose silence forever." Zuri looked down once more at the city below. The wind didn't feel so heavy now. She turned her back on the edge and sat beside him. She picked up the voice box, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt human. She felt alive. The girl with no place. Zuri sat quietly on the bed inside the small human ship. The voice box rested beside her, its soft light blinking, waiting to be used, but she didn't touch it. Her fingers stayed curled in her lap, still unsure, still afraid. Eli stood near the control panel, boiling water in a silver pot. The smell of something sweet filled the room. He didn't rush her, didn't speak too much, just gave her space. As if silence was not something to fear, Zuri looked around the ship. It was old, patched in many places, but clean. A warm yellow blanket was folded on the chair. Drawings of strange birds and stars covered one side of the wall. This place felt different from the cold towers and empty rooms of her childhood. It felt safe. Eli walked over and placed a steaming cup on the table in front of her. "Sweet leaf tea," he said, smiling gently, "helps calm the nerves. Earth and your planet both have it." "Funny, huh?" Zuri nodded slowly. She picked up the cup with both hands, its warmth making her chest feel less heavy. He sat down across from her. "I'm not here to fix you," he said, his voice steady. "I just want to know you." She pointed to her throat, then made a small shaking motion with her hand. "I know," Eli replied, "but you don't need sound for me to hear you." Zuri blinked, surprised. No one had ever said that before. All her life, People looked away when she tried to speak. They called her cursed, broken, useless. On her planet, everyone was judged by their voice. They sang to talk, to work, to connect with the stars. Zuri had none of that, just silence and shame. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of metal. It was bent, stained, and marked with an old symbol. Eli leaned forward, frowning. "What is that?" he asked. Zuri tapped her wrist where a scar still showed, then pointed to the symbol. He understood that mark. "It means outcast, doesn't it?" She nodded once. "I had a mark too," Eli said softly. He rolled up his sleeve. A long scar ran down his arm, old and rough. "Mine came from war," he continued. "Back home, they called me a machine, a killer. I lost who I was." Zuri stared at the scar. She reached out slowly and touched it with 2 fingers. Then she pointed to her own wrist. 2 broken people, marked by others, now sitting across from each other in peace. Eli smiled again, but this time it wasn't sad. "I don't care about your voice," he said, "or your past. I care about what you do now." He picked up the voice box and gently placed it near her again. "You don't have to use it," he said, "but if you want to, I'll be here to listen." Zuri picked it up. It was light. Her thumb brushed over the button, then stopped. "Not yet." She looked up at Eli and tilted her head, asking something without words. He understood. "How did I end up here?" he said, answering her silent question. He leaned back in his seat, looking at the roof of the ship. "After the war, I had nowhere to go. I volunteered for off-world trade routes. One day, I landed on your planet. Heard stories about a girl with no voice who climbed towers." Zuri's eyes widened. "You made people talk," he said gently, "even if you didn't speak." She lowered her head. "You matter, Zuri," Eli said firmly. "You're still here. That means something." Her hands trembled. She placed the voice box gently over her throat. The device gave a soft beep. Zuri pressed the button and tried to breathe, but no words came yet. Eli didn't rush her. He just said one last thing before letting silence return. "You don't need a voice to be strong. But if you want one, I'll help you build it." Zuri smiled for the first time in years, not because of hope in her world, but because someone finally believed in her. The voice they never heard, the sun was rising on the alien city as Zuri stood beside the human ship. The voice box was now fixed around her neck with a soft band. It was no longer blinking quietly. It was glowing with life. Eli stood next to her, arms crossed, eyes watching the city far ahead. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. Zuri nodded once. Her heart was loud inside her chest, but her feet did not shake anymore. She had run from this city for years. She had been called a curse, a ghost, a shadow, but now, she was walking back not to beg, but to be seen. They walked together toward the main square. People stared from the windows. Some remembered her, their eyes full of confusion and fear. Some whispered her name like it was a dark spell. Zuri kept walking. Her steps were calm, slow, but strong. The voice box hummed softly. She stopped in the center of the square, where the public singers once stood. It was the same place they had cast her out long ago. Eli didn't move. He just stood back and waited. Zuri looked around at the crowd forming, their eyes wide, their bodies still. She pressed the button on her voice box. A soft crackle filled the air. Then a sound came out. One word. Broken but clear. "Hope," she said. The crowd gasped. She repeated it again, this time louder. "Hope." Her voice was not like theirs. It was not perfect or melodic, but it was powerful. Because it was real. She placed a small speaker down and connected it to the voice box, and then, slowly, painfully, she sang. Not like the others with smooth silver voices. Her song cracked in places, low and strange in others, but it held pain, truth, and strength, and people listened. They didn't look away. Even the ones who hated her didn't speak. Children peeked from behind robes, eyes wide. A few older ones covered their mouths. Shaken, Zuri ended the song and looked straight ahead. The crowd was silent. Then one young girl stepped forward. She had a limp and scars on her face. She pointed to Zuri's voice box and signed with her fingers. "Can I learn too?" Zuri smiled and nodded. Another voice spoke from the back. "She's still not like us." An elder growled. "This isn't how things are done." Eli stepped forward now. "No," he said. "It's better than how things were done." The elder glared. "She's broken," he hissed. Eli shook his head. "She's brave," he replied. "She's still here. That's not weakness. That's strength." Zuri looked at the elder, then back at the girl. She pressed the button again. "I am Still here, she said, her voice firm. I choose life. Someone clapped, then another. Soon the square was filled with soft clapping. Growing louder, Zuri closed her eyes for the first time in her life. She wasn't invisible, she wasn't unwanted, she was heard. Later that evening, she sat inside the ship again, the tea warm in her hands. Eli looked at her and smiled. You were amazing, he said. Zuri smiled back and reached for the control pad. She tapped out simple words. You saved me. Eli shook his head. No, he said softly. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. Zuri looked out the window. The stars were coming out again, brighter than ever. For so long, she thought her silence made her small, but now she knew it made her powerful. End of story.